Father with a lot of bills to pay. Plus the hookers next door as apartment buildings become the home of escorts. Next.
This is Channel 2 News at 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. There was terror on the tennis court today as one of the world's most famous tennis players was stabbed in the back.
In Hamburg, Germany, a spectator plunged a knife into Monica Seles, the world's #1 female tennis player. It happened during a match she was playing, sending her into shock and the tennis world as well. Channel 2's Tony Guida is live for us now with the latest. Tony's at the National Tennis Center out in Queens.
Carol, 19-year-old Monica Seles left here triumphant last September with her second U.S. Open title in a row. She always electrifies and excites crowds with her powerful game on the court, and sometimes she causes controversy because of her Serbian background, but no one could have expected what happened today in Hamburg. The voice was Monica Seles as she was stabbed in the back by a spectator during a changeover between games. The man was quickly overwhelmed by security and taken away by the police. Fortunately, the wound to Ms. Seles was not deep, 1 or 2 centimeters, and she is now under observation at a hospital. Seles, of course, was badly shaken. Officials, of course, rushed to the court to help her. Monica Seles is a Serb from the former country of Yugoslavia, although she has been living lately in Sarasota, Florida. She has been the subject of controversy before. At last year's Wimbledon, Croatian militants sent a written death threat to her. You can see she's leaving the court basically under her own power, although she's on a stretcher. The crowd applauding. 7,000 people at that event in Hamburg today witnessed this terrifying incident. We were saying the Croatian militants had sent a death threat to her at Wimbledon last year. She has been criticized by other players, Goran Ivanisevic among them, for not taking a stand in the Serbian-Croatian situation. But we don't know if any of that has anything to do with what happened in Hamburg today. We do know this: it raises questions about security. And Dave, if you would come in here. Dave Meehan is the Director of Stadium Operations for the U.S. Open here every year, and that includes security. What do you make of this in terms of the question of security? Does the tennis establishment have to rethink how it patrols its events?
Well, naturally, the USTA abhors this terrible act, and the whole tennis community will have to reevaluate their security standards. Over the years, the U.S. Open has taken extreme measures to protect the privacy and the security of our spectators, the players, and naturally, with an event like this, we'll take a long, harder look at it again for 1993.
But I guess the question always comes up also, is there anything finally you can do if someone, mad or otherwise, is intent on harming a player or an official?
Well, that's difficult to answer. You can take every precaution you think will do it. You can surround the court with security and have enough security people in place to help prevent it, but can you guarantee it? No, absolutely not.
Well, the security is always good and efficient and tight here at the U.S. Open, and I know that various tennis facilities present different problems because some are more intimate than others. But David Meehan, thank you for your comments. I guess the bottom line and the good news is that from Hamburg, Ms. Seles does not appear to be seriously injured. The wound was 1 centimeter or 2 deep in her back. There was no blood in her lungs, we are told. So she is under observation at a hospital. Monica Seles, the world's #1 tennis player, just back on the circuit after a 9-week absence. An extraordinary event in Hamburg today. Tony Guida live from the National Tennis Center. Back to the studio.
I guess it's a little too early to tell if there was any muscle damage back there, Tony, as a result of the stabbing. Yeah. Okay.
It is too early, Ernie.
Okay. Thank you, Tony.
All right, now another news this evening here at home. Health officials in Nassau County are trying to play down fears tonight after discovering a stream of cancer-causing chemicals seeping into groundwater. Now, the stream runs for 3 miles from an industrial park in Garden City to the Franklin Square Elmont area. Nassau's health department is calling it the largest area of groundwater contamination the county, has ever seen. 17 of the 47 wells that supply the drinking water in Nassau Nassau have been affected by these chemicals. But officials also say the county's water purification devices will clean up the water before it reaches your taps.
All right, a Long Island grandfather who cleaned up in a bank robbery but didn't quite make a clean getaway is in big trouble tonight, and his arrest has some people wondering if he is a victim himself. Channel 2 Long Island correspondent Troy Roberts is joining us live right now from the courthouse in Central Islip with a little bit more on that story for us. Troy.
Thank you, Ernie. Eugene Cobboliter today pled not guilty to charges of robbery and criminal possession of a weapon. It is a dark day for someone who once kissed Lady Luck. 2 years ago, he hit the jackpot in Atlantic City, taking home $110,000. That money was gone in quick order. The family savings was next, and he is now $28,000 in debt. But what's worse is he's now facing 25 years without his freedom. He is 68 years old, a married man for 40 years, a grandfather of 13, and today he stands accused of bank robbery. A dazed Eugene Cobboliter was escorted from the hospital where he was recovering from a heart ailment to Suffolk County Court. There, a judge ordered that he be held in jail in lieu of $15,000 in cash. Distraught and mystified by the events of the last few days, Cobboliter's wife, Gertrude, believes he has lost his grip on reality.
That's it exactly. He became a frustrated old man.
Investigators say Cobboliter walked into this Chase Manhattan Bank branch Wednesday carrying his grandson's toy gun. He demanded money from a teller and was handed $20,000. But by the time he reached his Jeep in the parking lot here, a packet of red dye hidden in the cash exploded. A witness gave police the truck's license plate number. Shortly afterwards, detectives arrived at his Holbrook home where they spotted Cobboliter and a chase began.
He tried to escape. He sped into the Sachem North High School parking lot where he abandoned his vehicle, tried to run up a short incline where he suffered some kind of chest pains or heart attack.
Cobboliter was hospitalized for an irregular heartbeat.
I'm so mad at him to do such a thing, to embarrass us like this, to do this to my family. That when I went to the hospital, all I wanted to do was kill him.
His family says the high cost of heart medication is a burden on the elderly couple who live on a fixed income. But his wife believes desperation over mounting gambling debts may have moved her husband to act irrationally.
I've saved money. We've had money to live on, but like you say with the gambling, he exploited the money.
Cobboliter is being held at the Rivers Head Jail tonight where he is undergoing medical evaluation. That's it from Central Islip. I'm Troy Roberts reporting live. Let's go back to Carol and Ernie in the studio.
Thank you, Troy.
Just one day after a little Brooklyn boy was killed by a driver who had no business at all behind the wheel, another collision today has now sent a car over a curb and at least one more child to the hospital. Channel 2's David Diaz joins us now live from Saratoga and Bergen Streets in Brooklyn with more on this story. David?
Yes, indeed, Carol, an intersection that is dangerous, that people here say has been dangerous for some time. And it is just the scene of the latest incident in New York, where being on the sidewalk is just as dangerous as standing in the middle of the street.
Witnesses say a van ran through this stop sign, smashed into another car crossing the intersecting street, and ran up onto the sidewalk, where it struck two pedestrians who have since been hospitalized. This incident only a couple of miles from the scene where a 2-year-old child was killed and his 5-year-old brother critically injured. Struck by a car driven by a man authorities say had no business being behind the wheel of a car. For it turns out that Kennedy Yvonne Benoit, who allegedly first gave police a different name, continued to drive despite having his license revoked in 2 states. In 1989, it was revoked in New York, where it has since been suspended 17 times. In 1991, it was revoked in New Jersey, and since then, it was suspended 5 times there, the last time for a personal injury accident in the same car involved in yesterday's fatality.
Ay, Dios mío.
Today, relatives tried to comfort Dignora Santos, whose anguish cries for the 2-year-old she lost and the 5-year-old, still critically injured, fill the apartment. Later, she told me, "All I want is justice. This was not just an accident. This was recklessness."
The driver told police he was heading eastbound here on Eastern Parkway, and that as he approached the intersection of Nostrand Avenue, a car that was headed westbound was making a left, trying to beat the light. He said that's what caused him to swerve and to lose control. And then he plowed into the mother, the two children, and the woman that was with them.
Mrs. Santos says that's not what happened at all, that there was no other car, that the car was speeding, and had she not pulled herself and the children back from fear about what was about to happen, all three would now be dead.
Okay, we're back at the scene of a latest incident. You see this lamppost here? Well, people here say it has had to been replaced several times recently, knocked down by cars. Cars, they say, that keep zooming through this intersection. The people of this neighborhood say they need either a light or at the very least a four-way stop sign here. At least they were lucky enough 1 block away to just get a letter from the City Department of Transportation saying that corner of Howard and Bergen will now get a four-way stop sign, stop indicators along the street 200 yards before the sign. People wondering why is it the case over there, not yet over here. A lot of corners in the city where people are wondering what has to be done to make them safe. This is David Diaz live in Brooklyn. Back to the studio.
Okay, David. And this tragedy happens to be just the latest on New York City streets. Coming up a little bit later in our broadcast, Channel 2's Mike Taibbi will have more on the city's most dangerous roads and drivers in a special report called Fatal Crossings.
In other news today, a former world-class figure skater is expected to be back in jail in Westchester County tonight to face charges that he raped 5 of his students. 36-year-old Steven Savino is being returned to White Plains today from Massachusetts, where he was captured on Monday. Savino jumped bail 4 years ago, just as he was about to go to trial on rape, sodomy, and sex abuse charges. Savino's accused of raping 5 girls between the ages of 11 and 17.
There are charges today that sex is subsidizing the rent at dozens of apartment buildings in New York City, and it's being blamed on landlords who are apparently in such dire need of tenants that they're looking the other way. Channel 2's Chris Borgen has more.
It's $100 for the half or $135 for the hour.
Those are the rates for the services of a high-priced call girl doing business from a high-rise luxury building here in New York City.
Straight Swedish, fantasies, fetishes, role-playing, costumes, and lingerie. It's all included.
Those high-rise call girls even go so far as to advertise, mind you, in periodicals like Action Magazine, a sort of citywide sex guide, listing the who, the what, and the where, complete with pictures and telephone numbers, like this one, listed for Tiffany's. The telephone number, listing out to an apartment at 211 West 56th Street, the Carnegie Mews, a luxury high-rise apartment building. The protector of whose portals was not at all happy to see the Channel 2 News camera.
No talk to you at all, huh?
While no one in management would speak about prostitutes having set up shop in some of the building's luxury apartments, many of the building's tenants would.
Basically don't like the idea. I would not like them to be working from here.
I wish something would be done because I wouldn't want to live with it.
As far as Tiffany was concerned, as advertised, classic full service in that unmistakable French fashion, it would give the prospective John an appointment, but then direct him to call from a street phone across from the building just before coming up.
But while you're downstairs making this phone call, they are upstairs giving you the eyeball. If you pass the test, the word comes, come on up.
Once upstairs, the John is told to take it all off, to strip, and for law enforcement, therein lies the problem.
We are precluded, we are forbidden to have an officer undress.
The police, who average some 4,000 street prostitute arrests a year, say despite the legal handicaps, they are beginning to put a dent in that call girl racket.
Out in Queens, we, along with Judge Brown, the district attorney, have been addressing houses of prostitution along Roosevelt Avenue for the last year and a half, and we've closed several dozen. In Manhattan, the same type of thing with the mayor's Midtown task force.
At the Carnegie Mews today, it was just another day in the life of the big city. In Manhattan, I'm Chris Borgen, Channel 2 News.
Coming up next, what may have been David Koresh's last big lie in Waco. Also, the husband of a cop who was shot talks for the first time about his emotional vigil.
And later on, we'll tell you why a teacher sat on a roof all day today just because of something her students did. And radio's Don Imus gets his hands on a big secret and lets the whole world know.
Tobacco and Firearms Director Stephen Higgins said that he may retire once the investigation's finished into the standoff at a religious cult near Waco. Medical examiners said today that they have found 72 bodies in the ruins of the compound, and they may not find more. It has been thought 86 people died in the fire, but officials think that cult leader David Koresh may have exaggerated the number of followers inside the compound.
A Brooklyn police officer is speaking out now about the shooting that nearly tore his world apart. The husband of Officer Mary Capitosto is relieved, to say the least, that his wife has now emerged from a coma, and doctors are calling her recovery a miracle. Channel 2's Mary Murphy has the story.
In just over a month, they will celebrate their first wedding anniversary, and their pictures speak of a young couple deeply devoted to one another. What does Mary mean to you?
Pretty much the world. Just, you know, my partner. My partner.
But 10 days ago, police officer Paul Capitosto thought he was on the verge of losing his beloved partner, the feisty woman he met and courted at Brooklyn's 70th precinct. Paul, a narcotics cop, was working on a Queen Street when the sergeant told him his police officer wife had been shot in the head.
When you heard she was shot in the head, what went through your mind?
The worst thoughts possible. Just, how can she survive this?
And if she survived it, brain damage was expected. But never underestimate the determination of Mary Capitosto. 3 days into her coma, she moved a foot on command. On the 4th day,
I said, open your eyes, honey. She opened one eye. And I said, no, that's not good enough. Open both your eyes. So she opened both eyes, and I knew it's going to be a lot quicker than we had hoped.
Mary vividly remembers the shooting, recalling she ran into the precinct bathroom as a suspect was firing at fellow officer Robert Noblin.
She was pulling at his belt and trying to get him off of Bobby, and she couldn't quite get the job done because he was a very big guy, almost twice her size. But she tried, and the trying, I think, kept Bobby from being killed.
The suspect ended up killing himself. Paul Capitosto says one of his worst moments came when doctors handed him Mary's wedding band and diamond engagement ring for safekeeping, a fleeting sign that perhaps Mary would not make it. Now he holds them in his pocket, ready to put them back on her fingers, including the marriage band with its special inscription.
It says, my love for all eternity.
Paul says in many ways Mary is more worried about him, wondering if he's eating all right and asking him who's taking care of you. By the way, Mary Capitosto is now getting out of bed and walking. I'm Mary Murphy, Channel 2 News.
All right, stay with us as we continue, because if you like the fine weather today, you're going to love what Frank Field has to say about the weekend.
Yes, his forecast is in next. We'll also tell you about the major recall of a breakfast cereal you may have on your shelf, so stay tuned for that. And then later, a major new study on the best way to treat heart attacks. That story's in our 5 o'clock Health Watch. Makers of Captain Crunch cereal are warning tonight that you should not let your kids play with a toy that they might find inside their cereal boxes. Now, in boxes of Captain Crunch, Crunch Berries, and Peanut Butter Crunch, there are these little toys called poppers. Quaker Oats says that it has received reports of 36 kids who suffered eye injuries while playing with poppers. So once again, the cereal itself is safe, but do not let your kids play with the popper. We're also told that stores throughout the country are taking the boxes of cereal off the shelves that contain the toys.
You have to be very careful with that. We all know that. All right, on to the weather right now. And what a forecast, Frank. Beautiful, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hear about it.
Okay. I was waiting for that invitation. Yeah, it was a lovely day today. Matter of fact, quite a range in temperature throughout the area. We were up to 79 degrees, 78 degrees here in town, close to 80, 79 at Stewart, and close to 80 in the interior. But out at the east end of the island, at North Forks, they way in that cool area, they were no higher than 60 degrees, and right now the 65 at Islip. So quite a range in temperature, but warm air in general covers most of the east. We are going to experience a weather change. You'll scarcely note it because the clouds are accompanying it, and that's about it. Some scattered showers over upstate New York. We'll be in this nice warm air mass right through Saturday and right through Sunday. Now, on the satellite picture itself, you can see the clouds as they move this way. Mostly high, thin clouds, producing no rain, no showers, but to the north of us, yes, there were a few, and those clouds are beginning to break up. They're fairly scattered around now, and they'll continue to move through, and behind it, some more of that warm air and lots of sunshine expected both for tomorrow and for Sunday, and we'll get a repetition of that nice reading in the upper 70s. So for tonight, just some cloudiness around, and we expected temperatures to be on the mild side, around 55 here in town. And then for tomorrow, starting out at a fairly warm level, we'll warm up quickly, 60 here in town by noon, and then reaching up into the low 70s once again tomorrow afternoon. Lots of sunshine. And a 5-day forecast. Well, no complaints about this one. Dry and dry and nice. Yeah, dry and nice. You sound like David Letterman. We got a stage manager who works with David Letterman.
No,
Sunday,
wishes he did.
wishes, that's what it was. But lovely weekend, a lot of sunshine, and just delightful.
Sounds terrific. Well, let's all hope we can enjoy the weekend. Thank
will.
you, Frank. Well, don't be surprised if the New York Knicks look like they want to throw the book at the Indiana Pacers in their first playoff game tonight. The book is a secret playbook that's been made public, complete with plenty of nasty tidbits about the Knicks. Channel 2's Steve Levy is joining us live right now from Madison Square Garden with the story. Steve?
Ernie, thanks very much. Yeah, that's right. NBA playoffs open here tonight. Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. And the big story today is about the playbook, sort of like one of those low-budget movies where the high school team from North steals the high school playbook from the team from South. The only difference is this is the NBA, and now it's playoff time. A little bit more serious.
We have your book. You don't have it.
So this is the book that everyone's talking about. It's the Indiana Playbook, and it's also a scouting report of the Knicks. It belongs to Pacers rookie Malik Sealy.
Sealy beating Campbell with a base.
That is, until he lost it.
A fireman called me, and he found it out at JFK, and he said, if you'll make a donation to the Tomorrow's Children's Fund, I said I would, $1,000, and give me 2 Knicks tickets, you can have the book. I said, bring it over.
The document is now the property of crusty WFAN radio personality Don Imus. He immediately divulged his own version of its top-secret contents to us after his show.
Here's what it says about Greg Anthony. We can get him rattled, mistake-prone. Shooting is erratic. Patrick Ewing, susceptible to foul trouble. Goes with fakes, not that bright. Here's what it says about Anthony Mason. We must keep him off the boards. When he's in the post, stay down. Distract him with bucket of chicken.
So we stopped by Indiana's Midtown Hotel today. Reaction to Pacergate by the players was scathing.
Yo, man, turn that thing off.
The foul play didn't seem to bother this Knick at practice today.
To be honest with you, I don't think that's on any of our minds, and probably none of us really know about it. We're just concerned about us.
Sealy's a local kid by way of St. John's, but that streetwise savvy seemed a bit lacking when he called Imus, hoping to retrieve his book.
On the phone with us now from the Indiana Pacers, Malik Sealy. Good morning, Malik.
How you doing?
I'm fine, baby. How are you?
Not so good.
Did you know you were missing it?
Well, I did realize that I was missing it, but I didn't realize it would end up in the hand of such tasteless gentlemen.
At a local watering hole, sports espionage was the hot topic of the day.
I think he should give the book back because it doesn't matter. I think the Knicks are really going to overpower Indiana. They're a much more physical club.
Hey, I'll tell you, this is New York. Any edge we can get in New York, we're going to take it.
It's really all tongue-in-cheek. The truth of the matter is, playbook or no playbook, Knicks should beat these guys by 20 points. As you can see, they're still putting the court down. Right now, the Garden smells like the circus, if you know what I mean. About 8 o'clock tonight should smell like a playoff basketball. We'll see you at 6 with some more. Talk to the Knicks about the serious aspect of tonight's matchup with the Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. That's it from the Garden. Back to the studio.
All right, go Knicks. Thank you, Steve. Coming up next tonight, the school teacher who did more than hit the roof. She climbed the roof.
And then later, the amazing story of Pip the parakeet. This is the lost bird who can tell you where he lives, and he did just that. And then later on, from the crying game to the buying game, as Disney pulls off a movie deal that gets Hollywood's attention.
Jimmy, that's what he said.
An award. And here come the stars. How do you like the 93?
And today, dubbed the Domestic Peace Corps to make sure that anyone who wants to can afford to go to college. The president announced his national service program in New Orleans today. It would allow students to borrow money for college from the government instead of banks. Students could then either pay off the loans at low interest rates or pay them back with community service work, including work as cops or teachers. Carol?
Now, the principal at one New Jersey school spent this day head and shoulders above her students. This was a high-minded move intended to improve the minds of the children she's in charge of, as Channel 2's Vic Miles reports.
The principal of Mill Lake School hit the roof today. It's okay, though. She planned it that way, and for good cause.
We ran 10,000 books, and we had to put her up there.
Principal Nancy Richmond issued the challenge last September to all of her 420 students, kindergarten through 3rd grade. Read 10,000 books, and for one day, she'd do all school business from the roof of Mill Lake School. So the kids, amply inspired with the thought of Principal Richmond scrambling onto the roof of their one-story structure, did it. They read their little eyes out, and Principal Richmond had to hop onto the cherry picker and go to the very top of the class, ruling the roost from on high.
Well, all those books that you read have put me on the top, but I hope that your love for reading will never stop.
We had great results. From the day I kicked off the challenge, the kids started to read. They were real excited about it, started to monitor their progress toward the 10,000, and they've just been real excited about it.
The book reading challenge averaged out to about 50 books per student, and everyone got involved, as the kindergartners got their reading credits by having their parents read to them.
The reading is wonderful. I've been reading to my children since they've been infants.
The kids are really excited by this inspirational stunt. The biggest treat, though, is when she gives out class instructions. That's when the bucket comes down. You'll see what I mean. Watch.
Okay, let's back up a little.
Yeah, right. Dear third graders, thanks for reading all these books. This is fun. I'm really having fun. The weather is great up here.
This is just one of Principal Richmond's ideas that ring the bell here at Mill Lake. In 2 weeks, she's headed for the White House to receive the National Blue Ribbon Award for Excellence in Education. Looks like she deserves to be way up there in Monroe Township. Vic Miles, Channel 2 News.
It is. I think
Good
Nancy
for her.
Richmond may have started something.
I
for the
like
schools
the
to follow.
idea, yeah. We'll see what happened. At least it didn't rain today, too. That
Right.
was good. We'll be back in a moment to update our top story, including a very serious one, the stabbing of one of the world's most famous tennis stars.
And later on, defiance from General Motors as the government tries to get trucks recalled. Also, the Trumps have a deal. We'll tell you how Donald and Ivana have finally agreed on something.
Crystal clear Amoco Ultimate. What isn't? All other premium gasolines. What's clear? Amoco Ultimate is the only premium refined an extra step to remove harmful impurities other premiums leave in. Impurities that can rob your engine of performance and pollute the air. What's clear? If you use premium, now you have a reason to switch. Crystal clear. Crystal clear Amoco Ultimate.
And good evening once again on this Friday. I'm Carol Martin.
And I'm Ernie Anastos. Let's update you now on tonight's top stories here on Channel 2 News at 5 o'clock. 69-year-old grandfather Eugene Cadwalader has been charged with robbing a bank in Comac. He has been hospitalized with heart trouble. His wife says that he's lost his grip on reality and that mounting gambling debts may have drove him to robbery. A man charged with killing a young Brooklyn boy and critically injuring his brother in a collision yesterday has had his license suspended 22 times in New York and New Jersey. Kennedy Yvonne Benoit has just been arraigned on manslaughter charges and ordered held on $100,000 bond. Monica Seles, the world's #1 ranked women's tennis player, was stabbed in the back today by a man at a tournament in Germany. Doctors say that Seles' wound is not life-threatening. There is no yet word on the motive for the attack.
As the first week of a new round of Mideast peace talks comes to a close today, Israel is making a gesture to improve the atmosphere at the negotiating table. There were celebrations in the occupied West Bank this day as 15 Palestinians who were deported years ago were welcomed back home. Israel said it will complete its gesture of goodwill by allowing 15 more men to return tomorrow. Israel has been criticized for deporting 400 Palestinians back in December, which threatened to derail the peace talks, and Israel is slowly bringing them back as well.
The leader of Bosnia's Serbs was talking tough rather than talking peace today, just as President Clinton's putting the final touch on a package of possible military action. As fighting continued today, Serb leaders say that they won't sign any peace plan that takes away territory that they've gained by fighting Muslims and Croats. The announcement comes the day before peace talks are set to reconvene, and President Clinton will reach a final decision whether to lift an arms embargo or begin airstrikes or take other action to try to stop the war. But convincing the allies to take part may be difficult.
For a long time, President Clinton has attempted to rally the world community to take more forceful action to stop this ethnic cleansing.
And today, Secretary of State Warren Christopher said that he will visit Russia and London next week to rally support for action in Bosnia. Carol.
First Lady Hillary Clinton is stepping up her efforts to win support for the health care reform plan that's due out next month. Today, Mrs. Clinton met with more than half the members of the U.S. Senate. Senators said Mrs. Clinton indicated the president is leaning now toward voluntary price controls for doctors, hospitals, and drug companies in order to cut costs. If that doesn't work, the government may threaten mandatory price controls to bring health costs down.
Yeah, but it turns out spending more money may be the best way to treat heart attacks.
Up next, the results of one of the biggest studies of heart attack victims ever done. Our 5 o'clock Health Watch in a moment. fire hazards. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration asked General Motors to recall trucks with side saddle gas tanks. These are tanks that may be prone to explode in crashes. However, GM says the trucks have no safety defects and issued new data today to bolster its argument. Now, if the government wishes, it can now launch an investigation or begin federal hearings and go to court to try to get those pickups off the road.
Well, Carol, it is no secret that road accidents claim hundreds of lives in our area each year. But many drivers causing those crashes on New York City's most dangerous streets do have secrets. They shouldn't be driving at all. Channel 2's Mike Taibbi has the story in a special report called Fatal Crossings.
Cross the street and you know it. In a city of pedestrians, cars and drivers rule. Cross this street, the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, which many call a highway and some call a speedway. And you better ask yourself some very serious questions.
Am I going to make it to the other side? Is a car going to come by and drag my child from my hands?
The numbers citywide ought to be front page, but for some reason are not. More than 600 traffic deaths a year, around 300 of them pedestrians, around 20 bicycle riders. In fact, because of the city numbers, pedestrian deaths comprise a higher percentage of overall traffic deaths here than anywhere else in the country. In a city preoccupied with a yearly homicide rate, you have more of a chance of being killed by a stranger in a car than by a stranger with a gun or a knife. Some traffic deaths become notorious for other reasons, little Gavin Cato being run down by a Hasidic driver, and that death instigating a retaliation murder and 4 days of riots. A 74-year-old driver careening into Washington Square Park, killing 5 and injuring 28. 8-year-old Jonathan Medina being mowed down by a driver with an invalid license that had been suspended 41 times. But most traffic deaths are regarded simply as accidents, albeit tragic accidents. Deaths you don't hear about. Deaths like these on the Grand Concourse, the city's most dangerous street.
She was just crossing the service road, going towards one of the islands.
Brenda Norat lost her mother.
And she never got to the other side, to the island. She just got struck, and that was it.
Helen Valentine lost her niece.
So the wife crossed the Grand Concourse with her son and the little girl, Lydia. And the car just came and hit both of them.
Father John Jenick mourns the last of 4 of his parishioners killed on the concourse this year.
She was trying to cross. It was extremely dark out, and a car ran over her and continued on its way.
13 people died on the concourse in 1991, the last year for which complete figures are in. That's the same number killed on Queens Boulevard, while 9 were killed on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn and Northern Boulevard in Queens, and 8 on Brooklyn's Flatbush Avenue. How and why do so many die? Let's look at the Grand Concourse. When there's running room here, almost everybody drives over the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. To keep up with the traffic around us, we were pushed to do 50 or higher at times. And a lot of pedestrians, jaywalk. The killer streets are all wide, the walk sign intervals relatively short, the speed of too many cars excessive and unchecked, and too many drivers just don't care. Even the driver who clipped this dog as we were watching and then just sped off.
He hit this dog that we tried to get to the animal hospital, but they do the same with people.
What it all means is that if someone young and fit, like producer Rose Arce, walks off just as the walk sign goes on, she can make it across the 10 lanes of the concourse in about 28 seconds. Just quick enough.
Of course, if you're older or much younger, or pushing someone in a stroller who's even younger than that, or if you've just got a bad back like I do right now, it's going to take a lot longer than 28 seconds.
So, many of the victims are older, like Brenda Norat's mother.
It just sounds like it was just yesterday.
Well, the victims are younger, like Lydia, whose aunt keeps a scrapbook of her family's tragedy on hand at all times, and knows that tragedy is hardly unique.
You know how many funerals I've been to in this neighborhood with little boys and girls that have been killed?
There were fewer fatal accidents citywide this past year, just over 600, partly because the Department of Transportation added some radar traps and longer lights on some of our most dangerous streets. But that's not getting the dangerous drivers off the road, and tonight at 11 I'll show you how dangerous some of them are and why they're still behind the wheel. That's part 2 of Fatal Crossings tonight at 11.
We just don't realize how dangerous it is out there.
No, it's just not a story for some reason.
We'll see you tonight, Mike. Thank you.
Still ahead, the war of the Trumps is finally over, and so is their marriage.
But then again, you'll meet a couple that brings new meaning to that old saying about making beautiful music together.